Now we talk about cell reproduction or cell division. And just an introductory idea is that cells have the ability to reproduce, thus providing new cells for the growth and replacement of worn or injured ones. So cells do, while they're living organism or living units, they will also get worn out and will die and will need to be replaced. And those are replaced by the cells that are fresh, that are going through the division process. So generally what will happen is you have one cell and it will then become what we call two daughter cells. Why daughter cells? Because then it will divide into two more cells, and that's our cell reproduction. That process is called mitosis. Mitosis is the usual process of cell reproduction in human tissues that occur when the cell divides into two identical cells called daughter cells. And when we talk about identical under mitosis, then the resulting DNA is the same. So each of them has the very same DNA and same function, same capacity. And so they are what they're doing is extending out the tissue. So if the tissue becomes damaged through those cell divisions, the tissue is repaired. And if the tissue is repaired, that means that is a healing process for the organ that is working. So let's take a look in more detail of how this cell reproduction division happens. And so here's the mitosis process. And these are the phases of mitosis. And the two small structures near the nucleus called centrioles move to each side during mitosis to help divide the cell. And that's these right here. They're going to basically pull the cell apart. And then the cell division is happening in many phases. And so the key phases that we see is interphase is the relaxing phase, and it ends with the interphase, that is the relaxing phase. So interphase, think about it as intermission, and that's the relaxing phase. Then we have prophase, and so we have early, middle, and late prophase. Second thing is metaphase. So we have metaphase, and then we have anaphase. So early anaphase, late to and telophase. So I don't think these are on your test or that you're required to remember, but in case you do want to learn, then you have your interphase, then you have your prophase, and you have your metaphase, META, and then you have your anaphase, and you have your telophase. And so interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and then back to interphase. And so don't be overwhelmed by that. I don't think we need to really learn those. But let's just at least get an idea of what is going on. So we see that we have the nucleus. Nucleus is right here, and we have the nucleolus. That is a portion of your genetic coding is right here, and so the genetic coding begins to get dispersed, and as it gets dispersed, it begins to then become elongated. And so first here you have a condensation of that information, but then now it begins to unwind, uncoil. And in fact, not only uncoil, but it begins to subdivide into two sections. So this looks like a kind of like a butterfly. At the same time, you have your centrioles that are going to the opposite poles of the cell, and they are spreading out what we call kind of like a network or net, and said we're going to catch these butterflies and take those apart. So what happens is that these centrioles come to the opposite ends, they grab onto these, and then they pull them apart. So now you can see the butterflies sort of being pulled apart, and everybody in both of these sides get the equal amount of genetic coding. And when that happens, and then they begin to go through the telophase. This is where the your protoplasm, which is your structure here, begins to divide as well. And so the now you have your cytoplasm and you have your nucleoplasm right here, and this whole thing is again protoplasm. And so now you have two daughter cells that have been created. And so the two so basically, let's just read through this. Two small structures near the nucleus called centrioles, these are the centrioles, move to each side of during mitosis to help divide the cell. As long as conditions are favorable, the cell will grow and reproduce. Favorable conditions include an adequate supply of food, oxygen, and water, suitable temperatures, and ability to eliminate waste products. So the cell, before it divides, is looking for these favorable conditions, and one of them, interestingly, is the ability to eliminate waste products. So even a cell will generate some waste products that need to be that it needs to dispose of. So the conditions need to be appropriate for that. If the conditions become unfavorable, the cell will become impaired or may be destroyed. So cell division will not happen in those cases. And so unfavorable conditions, including toxins, poison, diseases, and injuries, will cause cell damage. And of course, then cell division is not a possibility under those conditions. Now we move to cell metabolism. Cell metabolism. Metabolism means metabolism is a chemical process that takes place in living organisms. So metabolism, through metabolism, cells are nourished and carry out their activities. And so there are two phases of metabolism. The two phases are called anabolism and catabolism. And the interesting thing about both of these phases is that they are carried out simultaneously and continually. Why are they happening simultaneously, and why are they happening continuously? Because this is a nourishing process. This is anabolism and catabolism is a nourishing process, and cell continuously needs energy for it to be active. And so anabolism and catabolism happens at the same time, simultaneously and continually, non-stop. Almost think about us, even though we're sleeping, we still continue to breathe. We still continue to breathe. In the same way, cells will continue their metabolism process continuously. Let's take a look at the catabolism, what that is. Catabolism is the phase of metabolism in which complex compounds that are coming into the cell within that cell are then broken down into smaller ones, because if you have a complex compounds that have come into the cell can't do anything with it. Cell needs to break it down and recreate its own components and components that it can use or that it's going to eject out of the cell into the bloodstream for other areas such as hormones or enzymes. And so when those things are going to happen, it needs to break down the complex compounds, and then that breaking down is called catabolism. And then we have the opposite end. Anabolism is the constructive metabolism, or the process of building up larger molecules. So let's say here's a cell, and you have this very complicated, let's say, protein that has come inside. And now, having come inside, this has to be broken down. And so it's broken down into its subdivisions and its components. And then the cell will then go through that's the catabolism. So we'll just call it the cat. And then here, it restructures into another proteins that's more suitable for the cell, or that the body needs it in other areas that this is going to be sent out to. And that process is called anabolism. So we have catabolism and anabolism. A way to remember catabolism and anabolism is that the catabolism, it's the breaking down phase. So we see cat here, that's breaking the vase down, and it's kind of knocked it over. And then you see, even though cat is very, very cute, it still has done a breaking or the destruction part. So that's where the cat has broken it down. Now we have Anna, this lady named Anna, who is having to rebuild up. So taking broken pieces of the vase or cutlery or whatever the cat has broken, and she's having to then put it together and build something, building it up. So you can think about cat breaking things and then anabolism building it up. So Anna is there building that up. A way to remember. And so in catabolism, when the breaking down process happens, the book tells us this process releases energy that is stored by special molecules to be used in the muscle contractions, body secretions, or heat production. So what is our cells doing? They're helping helping the muscle contractions or body secretions or heat productions. As we said, the cells are continuously doing some function, and so they need energy. And the energy comes in when the complicated molecules are broken. The molecules, when the bonds in the molecules store a lot of energy. And so those, as molecules are broken, or these bonds are broken within the molecule, and you get release of energy. So this process of breaking down is actually releasing energy, and that energy is being used for the muscle contractions, body secretions, or heat production. On the other side, anabolism is a constructive metabolism, the process of building up. During this process, the body stores water, food, and oxygen for the time when these substances will be needed for cell growth and repair. So what is this doing? It's of course making certain proteins, but also it is making up taking certain energy molecule like glucose and turning into glycogen, and then that becomes fat, and fat then begins to get as a part of storehouse. So extra source of energy, you might say, things that are coming up that are not utilized in the energy production will then in the process get stored. So anabolism is what is going to be storing that energy. So building up is a process for restructuring it so that things can either be stored or ejected out of the cell for other purposes. Let's conclude with what we'll talk about in the future. We'll talk about tissues. And tissues, when we talk about tissues, they're the layering of these cell units that come together and form tissues. And there are 4 types. So we have connective tissue, we have epithelial tissue, and we have muscle tissue, and we have nerve tissue. So 4 types of tissues that we're going to be taking a look at, and that's what's going to be upcoming when we enter into tissues. And the other thing that we do want to talk about, tissues make up organs, and organs will then make up body systems. So organs, we know we can talk about a heart, we can talk about liver, we can talk about kidneys, we can talk about all kinds of organs that we have in our body. But the 11 body systems that we have is skeletal, muscular, nervous, circulatory, lymphatic, endocrine. And endocrine affects growth, development. That's the releasing of growth hormones. And digestive, excretory, that eliminates waste. And then non-respiratory, that's for breathing, supplying oxygen. And then integumentary system is our skin. And then 11th one is reproductive. So these are our 11 body systems that we'll eventually get to after we look at tissues and organs.